it going, everybody? Welcome to the channel. This is Big Daddy Dave, and this is Farm Sim Talk, a show where we get to interview other creators here within the Farm Sim community. And today, I am joined by Farmer Murphy, aka Murph. Murph, how you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing excellent, Dave. How about yourself?
Oh, I am fantastic. As my father would say, I'm finer than frog's hair. So before we get into the interview, why don't we go ahead and start out by telling everybody what it is that you do here within the Farm Sim community?
Well, I mostly make just Let's Play videos, but I do the odd testing video as well. But that's primarily the focus of my channel.
I gotcha. And where can everybody find you?
Well, pretty much on YouTube is the best place to find me. I do have a Discord channel, but that's right now I just use it mostly for multiplayer with my buddies and, getting to follow others Discord channels. I'm kind of I'm not against social media, but in my career, I just was awash with it. And when I retired, I just wanted to get away from it. I used to, be on Facebook and a bunch of other ones, and I said to myself, this just feels like being back at work. So I just kind of shut all that off for that reason. And it's to my own detriment, I know, for if you're trying to grow a channel. But yeah, it's just a hobby for me anyway. So YouTube is where you're going to find me for now. That may
Excellent.
change, but that's where you're going to find me.
Excellent. You want to let us know where, or do you want to give any shout outs before we get going?
Sure. Actually, to yourself, Dave, because we chatted previously, and I think it's admirable what you're doing here. And I know you're limited on time. I can I appreciate that in my situation as well. And so I think it's fantastic you take the time to put back into the community like this. And then, of course, I have to mention Dust Bunny because she's the one that threw my hat in the ring, which kind of shocked me. But because uh, I always say my channel, call it small as an insult to the small channel. So I call it a micro channel. That's my term. But no, I appreciate her volunteering my name and giving me this opportunity. So shout out to her as well.
Absolutely. Dust Bunny is an absolute rock star. I see her out there in the chat. I also see Philippa Thompson. Philippa, thank you so much for coming out. Dust Bunny, thank you as well. Dirty and Nilsson, thank you. Thanks everybody for stopping by tonight and watching along. Now, before we get into the interview, I actually have a quick announcement here really quickly. I want to give a absolutely massive shout out to Munchies Plays. Munchies has been an absolute rock star and a big friend of the channel, and he helped out to produce something for the channel. I'm going to show it off here, right now, and then we're going to get into the interview. I hope you all enjoy this because I know I sure did. I hope you're ready. The brand new Farm Sim Talk theme song starting music. Here we go.
This is Farm Sim Talk with BDD. Let's roll.
Out here in the country, where the roads run wide, there's a world behind the pixels that we're bringing to the light. From maps to mods to the rigs we drive, we're talking to the folks who keep this farm life alive. It's Farm Sim Talk with BDD. Come pull up a chair and ride along with me. Stories from the makers, the builders of the scene. Farm Sim Talk, where we live the farming dream. He's got questions rolling like a big John Deere, digging deep with modders so their voice voices we can hear. From giants of the code to the artists painting skies, he's shining up their stories like a brand new combine. It's Farm Sim Talk with BDD. Come pull up a chair and ride along with me. Stories from the makers, the builders of the scene. Farm Sim Talk, where we live the farming dream. From tractors to textures, from silos to sounds, there's a whole crew of heroes making this world go round. So tune in and find out who's behind the screen. Farm Sim Talk's the place to see what farming really means. It's Farm Sim Talk with BDD. Come pull up a chair and ride along with me. Stories from the makers, the builders of the scene. Farm Sim Talk, where we live the farming dream.
Oh man, I hope everybody out there is as pumped up as I am after that one. That is, whew, love it. Big shout out to Munchies Plays. Again, go check him out over at Munchies Plays there on YouTube and give him a follow because wow, he does amazing work. But again, thank you so much for riding along with me on that one. Just wanted to throw that one out as a quick announcement. Now let's get into the interview. Thank you so much for your patience there, Murph. Let's go ahead and get into the first segment there called Digging Up Dirt. This is the segment where we get to know you for who you are outside of the farm sim community. So starting out with, do you have a job outside of the content creation sphere, or is this your primary job?
Well, no, I am retired. Retired to stay home and look after our granddaughter who lives with us. But at that time I was semi-retired anyways, just doing some contracting. So I do that as my primary job, and then when I'm allowed, I do content creation. But I thought I should actually mention one other thing because I there's probably going to be folks out there going to have a burning question on their mind, and that is, what is Farmer Murphy hiding under that baseball hat? Well, I'll tell you, absolutely nothing. I'm just protecting you folks from the glare. Although, if you went to a nice restaurant and ordered yourself a bowl of soup and it came with this hair in it, you'd say that was a lot of hair. So it's all relative.
I gotcha. So really, you say you're retired, but I can speak, as being a parent myself to two little ones. That's its own full-time gig, So we'll go
Yeah,
ahead and count that as your job.
yeah, she's 3.5. She keeps me going. That's for sure. My wife works in the healthcare industry. She's still working. Our son, who lives with us as well, is working. So it would just made the most sense. I was in the best position to stay home and look after her. And it's the best job I've ever had by far. It's
Oh yeah,
excellent. Change it
extremely.
for the world.
Yeah, extremely rewarding. There's nothing better than being able to see those little ones every day, watch them grow and learn and do. It's fantastic.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
So what, if you don't mind me asking, what was your job prior to, retiring?
Well, I worked in it's a difficult thing to explain because it was a very niche area that I worked in. And I worked there started out of high school, and that was in machinery protection, basically vibration monitoring. So what we did is install equipment that monitored the vibrations of large rotating equipment. Well, so any industry that had motors, pumps, compressors, gas turbines, steam turbines, we would go and put these sensors on and monitor the vibration, and that would be a key indicator of machinery health, and it was part of the safety system. And so I installed those and did that for many years and then moved into management. So that's what I was doing.
Okay. So yeah, basically monitoring the health of like bearings and stuff that's causing it to spin and
Exactly. Monitor the actual large machines, most of them have Babbitt bearings or oil film bearings, and we'd actually go right through the bearing and look at the rotor itself, the movement within the bearing. A lot of people's conception is that the rotor would go around the bearing. Where are you here? Like this in the circumference of the bearing. It does not. It sits in an area of one side or the other, depending on rotation, and sits on an oil wedge. So the bearing may have a clearance. Even big machines, like I'm talking 400 megawatt TG sets, they would only have a bearing clearance of like 6, 7 thou. And
wow.
the vibration limit, the shutdown would be, around 2.5 or 3 thou of movement within that bearing. But if you think you've got a 70-ton rotor doing 3,600 RPM, the kinetic energy in there, if things go wrong, can be really bad.
Oh yeah.
And so vibration and temperature and in some cases pressures were primary safety measurements to protect the equipment and the people working around the equipment. Because if they let go, there was a case in Germany where just that was about, I think it was about a 250 megawatt TG turbine generator, a steam driven generator set making electricity. Actually, the shaft cracked axially. Usually they would crack radially around the circumference, but this one cracked down the center line and it blew apart, and it looked like that building had been bombed, and they found chunks of rotor a mile away that weighed 2,000 pounds.
Wow.
Destroyed the building, destroyed that machine, destroyed the machine next to it. Happened in the 80s in Germany.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that
So
was the kind of thing we prevented, or
well,
that we were supposed to prevent. That's the idea anyway.
well, yeah, and what's wild is it just takes one of those kind of cataclysmic events to be able to be like, okay, we need to figure out how to prevent this for the future.
Well, and when I started in the industry way back in the 80s, early 80s, that fear was the motivating sale factor at the time, because you just had all these horror stories where equipment wasn't monitored and things went horribly wrong. And this, it wasn't only the equipment, but then of course environment became a concern. Even if you had a seal leak and you had nasty products spitting out into the environment, that was a problem. So but it came to the point where insurance companies mandated that in order to get insurance on your machinery, you had to have this type of monitoring on it. And I was very fortunate to work for the company that basically pioneered that whole industry.
Oh, that's fantastic. So yeah, I mean, it kind of worked out, in every regard. From a business aspect, you're almost guaranteed that there was going to be a need for it. Then at the same time, it was driving good product from the actual businesses themselves, as a safety mechanism to force them into making sure that they weren't just going to leave everybody in the lurch.
Yeah, and it was very, very good to me. I can't complain. I had a 30+ year career there. I started, like I said, almost right out of high school, and then I said I need to go back and get more education, so I went back to college, and then ended up back there, and worked for an additional, like I say, nearly 30 years.
Oh wow, see, and that's rare nowadays to find, people who have longevity in a single, company or career path. Oftentimes you hear nowadays of people just bopping around from, place to place to place until, they kind of reach your limit or whatever the case may be. So that's nice that you were able to, find that stability.
Well, and that was kind of the thing at the company, because it was so niche, that for the guys who went out and installed, and ultimately, when I first started, I jumped in my truck. I had a soldering iron, a whole bunch of schematics, and a bucket load of different components, transistors and chips and capacitors, and I'd run around and troubleshoot boards and put them in the field, to where it became every board in the system was a computer. And so our uh, guys that went out and installed the systems were all Microsoft certified network technicians, as well as, usually a lot of them were either engineers or engineering technologists. And we invested a ton of money in these guys to do the job that I used to do. We would not, a guy wouldn't be 100% trained and be able to go out and do any job for somewhere between a year and 2 years, depending on his aptitude. But like, if the customer called and I could just pick anybody off the bench to go do any job, that's how long it would take. If it was for the guys who actually went and diagnosed the machinery, I called them the machinery doctors, they would take the data that these systems were gathering and then diagnose what was wrong with the machine. They were close to 5 years. We'd have to train them for 5 years before they could go on any job, because they had to be proficient on every type of machine, whether a gas turbine, steam turbine, hydro turbine, a motor, a pump, a compressor, a reciprocating compressor, and then all the faults that were specific to that type of machine. So when you invest that kind of money in training an individual, you hang on to them, so you treat them well so that they don't want to move. And so the average length of service at our company before we were bought out was about 14 years.
Wow.
It was kind of unheard of, but that was why, because the company recognized the investment in these individuals and how important they were to the business, so they treated them as such. They were our most important asset.
No, and that's fantastic. I mean, when especially, being as niche as you said, recognizing that, hey, these are the people that are going to make sure that we continue to get business and, don't have some kind of massive lawsuit on our hands. That's yeah, that's good that they recognize, and it was good that that they made the effort to have a good working environment. So that's fantastic. It sounds like I got into the wrong career.
It was even after we were bought out by General Electric. It did change the dynamics somewhat, but it was I still can't complain. There's no complaints there, no regrets. The career path I chose, it was very good to me.
That's fantastic. That's like I said, that's a rare thing to find nowadays is, that kind of long-term stability. It's getting rarer and rarer nowadays. So congratulations. So let me ask you this. What are some of the hobbies that you have besides playing FS? Do you do any hiking, fishing, watch sports?
Well, if you're talking today, uh, no, I don't have a whole lot of hobbies, uh, because of my granddaughter. It takes most of my time, and then farm sim takes the rest. But yeah, I used to be super active, and the granddaughter changed part of that, or part of that reason, and then COVID changed our lifestyle big time too when that rolled around. Um, yeah, did a lot of fishing, hunting, boating, skidooing in the wintertime. Um, Messed around with guitar a fair bit. Um, did a ton of uh, competitive shooting. That was probably my biggest hobby, but that all got shut down during COVID, and then Parker came along in that time frame as well. And when COVID thing kind of went away, cowboy action shooting is a very expensive hobby, and I was no longer going out and doing those sweet little contracting jobs, so I haven't actually gotten back into it since.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah.
that that would have been the thing I spent the most time on was the shooting before Farm Sim.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about there. That is not a cheap hobby. Just a case of rounds nowadays is just an arm and a leg practically. So
Well, we used to cast all our own bullets and, of course, make all our own ammo. And we go through about 10,000 rounds a year.
wow, man. I there are times where I say, making your money go boom is a good thing, and it sounds like you found the most efficient way to do it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I burned up a lot of dollars, literally, in powder and lead.
So, do you like to read or watch movies?
Yes, yes, and yes. Although, again, I haven't been reading as much as I used to, but I was a voracious reader, especially when I traveled. Um, I went through books like crazy, and that's what was my pastime when I was on the road. I most often would you'd find me sitting in a restaurant having my evening meals. I'd be sitting and reading, and then I'd go back to the hotel room and read, or read on the plane. Yeah, so I read a lot of books now. I read a lot online. I think that's the big difference. Is I'm reading things that interest me on that I've Googled and searched. But yeah, I kind of miss that actually. Is the reading.
So, what would be some of your favorite books that you've read?
Oh boy, favorite books. Lord of the Rings would have to be up there. Read it a couple times actually. Um, and then I think hmm, if I had to go on a deserted island and take one book that I was forced to read over and over, I think it would probably be Larry McMurtry's Lonesome Dove, because it's a big sucker. No, it's an excellent, excellent book too. But I mean, I read everything. Probably the author I've read the most number of books of is by Stephen King. But I read Grisham. I read uh, Clyde Cussler, Wilbur Smith. Then I like fantasy books as well. So Terry Brooks, Terry Goodkind, Robert Jordan. I've read a number of their series. I've even read Mark Twain and some Dickens as well, some highbrow stuff just to try and educate myself. It didn't work. Uh,
So,
James Patterson would be another one. I've read quite a few, the Alex Cross series. So
okay,
it's not one just genre. It's just I read lots of different things.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Keeps what do they call it? An eclectic collection
I
going.
suppose. Yeah. Well, and I also was into for a while reading about like Sam Walton and Ray Kroc and those guys. Read some of their books or, those kind of books as well, like nonfiction.
Okay. So, what's your opinion on like movie adaptations? Have you gone and read the book and then seen the movie and
Yep. I did that with Lord of the Rings. I read Lord of the Rings first time. It actually started with Hobbit. We had to read The Hobbit. It was mandatory reading in high school. Kind of got me interested, so I read Lord of the Rings. I really enjoyed it. And then I heard the movie was coming out. So before the movie released, I went and read the series again. And that is probably is the best adaptation of a book that I can think of. It was different. I mean, but they followed as closely I think you could humanly do to that book. I mean, I thought it was an amazing job. Um, and the very like I've not seen very many Stephen King adaptations that I've been very excited about. And I think it's just because they're forced in that format to cut too much out. He spends so much time on character development and backstory, and when you take that out, there's no time to put it in the movie. It loses its like it doesn't hold you like the book does. A Stephen King book usually, in the first chapter you're hooked and you got to go on. And I just don't find the movies have that same hook to them myself. So for me, I usually prefer the book over the movie.
Oh, for
I don't
sure, for
find it
sure.
too often that the movie is better than the book.
Yeah, and like you said, that kind of character development that you can get into with a book that you really can't, or at least to a limited degree on a movie, it builds that kind of connection that you have with the characters that you're reading. You get kind of a sense of, who they are, how they would act, and then you can kind of follow the story along to kind of like build the
Yeah.
adventure with them. So yeah, it's one of those. I agree with you that books tend to be generally better than the movie adaptation. And what I also find is it's because you're reading it and you're building the world in your imagination. You're actually like the creator to an extent. Like you're reading it and it's been created, but you're visualizing it in your mind. And then when you go to see it in the theaters or you see it on the TV screen, it's never as good as it was in your mind.
Yeah, and sometimes you go, well, yeah, I can see, it's a different vision of what I like. One particularly bad one that comes to mind is the Reacher movie where they had Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise was not Reacher at all, like
Yeah.
not even close. And like the Reacher series, the TV series, they did a much better job. That is more like what the Reacher that's described in the book,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So it's just sometimes they do better jobs than other times. And yeah, it may not be exactly that fits your imagination or how you visioned it, but you look and say, yeah, well, I can see that. But with Tom Cruise, you go, I don't see it. Sorry. Man. And for
Well,
me, that kind of wrecked the movie, although the movie wasn't bad and it followed the book pretty faithfully. That character was wrong. It just didn't fit. It was out of place.
yeah.
So for me, that ruined the movie kind of.
Well, and when you do read the book and you hear the description of the character, I forget his name off the top of my head, but the Amazon series version, like that is Reacher. Like he's supposed to be this big old dude and like nigh indestructible. Tom Cruise, you look at him and it's like,
Yeah.
he's a smaller guy and it's just like the proportions
Doesn't have
aren't
the
there.
physique and didn't
Yeah.
really have. I just didn't. You just couldn't believe the persona that he was putting out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know the actor who did the TV series, the Amazon series, but like he nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's the demeanor, the look, just the physique, like you said. Yeah, they did a much better job on the actual TV series than they did on the movies. And just Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, all fine and dandy.
Yeah,
You
that
you,
was fine.
you call him Jack Reacher? No, thank you.
And some actors are just like if you ever watch Lord of the Rings, if you get the collectors, the first one, Viggo Mortensen, oh, I can't say his last name, but Viggo, let's just call him that, who played Strider. He was a last minute replacement, and the things he did to get into that role, and I thought he did an excellent job of
Yep.
that role myself, and that's what some of the things. That's also the best behind the scenes DVD um, production I've ever seen. That was amazing. I actually I got that for Christmas. I remember the year it came out, and I sat and I binge watched the whole thing. And then the making of Lord of the Rings was even longer, and I binge watched that, the whole bit of it. I even watched the commentary. You can watch the movie through with different commentaries, and I watched them all because it was fascinating.
Hmm.
I mean, I could spend the whole interview telling stories on that, but it's well worth the watch. I'll tell you, well worth the watch. Best making of I've ever seen.
Well, there was something I came across actually just here within the past couple of days is that the story is that the person who was supposed to play Viggo Mortensen's character originally, I think it was Russell Crowe. It was either
Oh,
Russell Crowe
really?
or somebody along those lines. It was a very famous like actor, like an A-list actor. And then they basically turned it down and said, no, that's not what I'm going to be interested in. Because to them, when they read the part, they just thought, it was not going to be a big deal kind of thing. They were, thinking they were going to be and I'm almost certain it was Russell Crowe. I could be wrong about that, but but then they got the guy Viggo Mortensen to play that role, and you're right, he did a fantastic job as Aragorn and Strider. Yeah, it was. I mean, it's a fantastic book. It's a fantastic movie.
And the depths they went to, the effort they put into that movie to bring you into that world it was amazing. It was amazing.
100%. So
Made you appreciate the movie even more.
yes. Oh, yeah. Well, they did a really good job on sticking true to the actual like the story itself. You know, actually like retelling it rather than recreating it.
Yeah.
So, what about music? What kind of music are you into?
Uh yeah, everything pretty much. I'd say country and western, particularly classic country, is got a very, very minimal edge over classic rock. Um, but then I like folks like Ray Charles and Etta James and Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby. They're all in my playlist as well. So it's a little bit of classical thrown in here and there and instrumentals, and so it's far reaching, I'd say.
I gotcha. So, you mentioned country western. What who's your go-to artist for those?
Boy, that's of all the genres, that's probably one of the toughest go-to ones. Um, Kind of like in the classic, it'd be, I'd be hard pressed to choose between like Johnny Cash, Merle Haggard, and Jim Reeves, Patsy Cline. Those are real tough choices for me. And the more modern side, that's a little bit easier. It just comes down to two uh, um, uh, George Strait and Alan Jackson on the more modern side.
Nice, yeah. All of them are classics. Yeah, they're definitely on my playlist too.
Chris Stapleton too has to get an honorable mention.
Yes. Oh yeah. He actually went on tour with George Strait here recently, and I caught their concert not too long ago. It was an amazing concert.
I've seen George Strait in concert. Yeah, it was really good. And interestingly, just a side note, the very first concert I ever went to in my entire life was Johnny Cash, and I had front row seats for Johnny Cash, Little Jimmy Dickens, and Dottie West, and the Statler Brothers, of course.
Oh wow, that sounds like that would have been an awesome concert.
It made an impression on me. That's why became a Johnny Cash fan at about 15 years old, and that stuck. That's been what, 50 years now.
I gotcha. So we mentioned the books, the books, the movies, and the music. So we kind of nailed down some of your favorites and whatnot. What would you say would be the oddest or weirdest book or movie that you've seen up until this point?
The oddest one. Well, there was what was that Dan Aykroyd one? Coneheads. That was pretty odd. Um, no, you know what? Thinking back on it, this is probably way before your time. But let me think. When would that have been? That had been in about uh, it'd have to be about 76 to 78 in there someplace. There was this movie out, it was horrible, the movie itself, or what was that called? Rocky Horror movie,
Rocky Horror Picture
Rocky
Show.
Horror, Rocky Horror Picture Show. It had Tim Curry got his start in there as a singing transvestite. That's what I remember.
Hmm.
But the movie was bad, but the movie going experience was great because you go to the movie, and I got told to go to this thing, and so I was taken totally by surprise. And people are coming dressed up like this. I go, what in the heck is going on here? And then you go in there, and I think one of the first things was that they were standing on there. There were a lot of famous actors in that too. I
Yeah.
remember that. Tim Curry's the only one I can come up with because he's kind of unforgettable in that. Anyway, uh, but then it starts to rain, and all of a sudden you're getting pelted with water, and then your rice is coming flying at you during a wedding. I can't remember what all else, but I was dumbfounded when I came out of there. I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell you if I had a good time or if I was annoyed. But it was odd. It definitely fit the odd description. Yeah, Rocky Horror.
Yeah, 100%. I was shown that movie a long, long time ago. Never got into it. It was one of those like meh. And then afterwards, the same person who showed it to me wanted myself, my cousin, because my cousin and them were dating at the time, and she like invited us all out to go to the theater to go see it, and I had literally maybe a few days before had read something about the theaters that show this kind of get a little bit animated like you're saying, and I was like, nope. You two can have fun. I'll be a third wheel somewhere else.
Meatloaf was in that, and he wrote the music, a lot of the music for that. Now I just remembered that. So
Yeah.
that's kind of had to be pretty early in his career.
Oh yeah, that would have been pretty, yeah, pretty early. So what would you do if content creation was no longer an option for you? Let's say, your system, blew up, you didn't have the means to replace it right away. What would you do in the meantime?
Well, I think I kind of alluded to. I think one of the first things I get back into reading again. Uh, I had a buddy, I ran into as a customer at one time, and then we both went into kind of the contracting gig at the same time. Only he went and did a lot of offshore stuff, and we got talking on this one job, and we were talking about books. It's funny enough, and what we were reading and who we liked, and it turned out we had a lot of similar tastes. So he gave me a thumb drive with 3,000 books on it because they had, when they were on the oil rigs, they had kind of a book club thing going. And I've only gotten through about 100 of those books. So I got a ways to go, and I better get on it because I don't have I don't have all the time in the world left. So I definitely get back to doing some more reading. Um, if I wasn't going to do any kind of like other, I probably wouldn't do any other game content. Like I don't have the passion for that kind of passion for the others. I'd probably dig out one of the guitars and start messing around with that some more. And now that Parker's getting a little older, I'd probably go back to doing some more shooting.
I gotcha. And has it always been a dream of yours to be a content creator, or did you just kind of fall into it?
I fell into it. Um, well, I started playing when FS19 was free on PlayStation, and I didn't realize the the difference between PlayStation and PC. So I'd have a problem and I Google it. And quite honestly, that's when I first started watching any kind of YouTube as well. Before that, I didn't bother with it. There's nothing I really spent any time on. So, you Google it and you get a YouTube video. So I go and watch this guy do this fix, and I go, I can't do that. This guy's he's an idiot. I don't even have those commands. What is this guy talking about? It took me a while to figure out that there was a difference between PC and console. And of course, if you're playing on console, there's only one go-to guy, and that's Mr. Sealy P. So I latched onto him, and um, I just, whenever I had a problem, I would just search that problem in his name because I knew the solution he gave me would work. I could do it.
Mhm.
And then that's all I did for a while. And then, but obviously you hit on his channel, and then I thought, well, hey, he's got these mod reviews and some of these, I should watch some of these things because a lot of things that I would go looking for would be on a test video. So I started watching those kind of regularly, and then these Let's Play things, I wasn't interested in that. Pish posh, I want to go watch that. Who in their right mind would sit there and watch somebody play a game? And then finally one day, I guess out of boredom or whatever, I just said, I'm going to try watching one of these things. I mean, it only took one, and I was hooked with the guy. and I went back and started at the beginning. So I watched everything of his, and he kept on, throughout the theme, as even as his channel grew, he says, if you want to do it, just go and do it. Just not just go and do it. Don't worry about it. Just go and do it. And he kind of put that bug in my thought in my head, because I had no intention of ever doing it. But he just said it so many times. I finally said, okay, Mr. CDP, darn it, I'll go and do it then. What have I got to lose?
You know
And
what?
but I
I,
did. And I started in 22 making content.
I basically started the same way. I'm reading the same exact book you are. It's one of those where I start watching, creators like Mr. CLP and DJ Goham and all that, and it's like, okay. And then you said, Mr. CLP would, like, if you want to do it, just do it. Just go, have fun with it, kind of thing. And it's like, you know what? I will do that. And sure enough, I started, and that was what, about 3 years ago, and haven't looked back ever since. So yeah, big shout out to Mr. CLP and the other content creators out there who have kind of pioneered the trail here.
Yeah, definitely. And it was really sporadic in the beginning. I'm more dedicated now, but unfortunately, when I decided to uh, think that, oh yeah, this is something I could actually really get into, is when the granddaughter came along, and so that made it difficult there for a while, especially when she was an infant. They take a lot more of your time and attention. So, but like I always say, one of my favorite things, it is what it is. You can't do anything about that. So I just plod along, do my best.
Absolutely, 100%. And you made mention earlier that you were married, that you had a son, I believe, and you
Yes.
are a full-time caregiver to your granddaughter. So how is it that you find the proper balance between the home life and the creator life?
Oh, that's very easy. My wife, who is also known as she who must be obeyed, and then the granddaughter, mini me of that, they pretty much take care of that. It's But you just got to put family first. But I mean, it comes fairly naturally. Like when you got to look after, you got to feed them, you got to change them, and all the things that go along, as you well know, when you've got a young child, that takes precedent. That's a no brainer. So I find it just takes care of itself pretty much. I don't have to. It's not a struggle I really have. Um, just keep the main thing, which is the family, and the content is secondary.
Gotcha. So kind of walk us through like a typical day and how you would go about to create your content. You wake up in the morning, you're going to be taking care of your granddaughter for throughout the day. When are you able to then get to your content?
Well, I try and keep as much banked up as I can, as I reasonably can. I find it's a balance there, because if I get too far ahead, I kind of that what I've recorded, uh, I kind of lose place of where I am, because on my I don't do role play like per se or anything, but I like to follow a storyline. Even when I played on my own, I kind of had a storyline going in my head as to, well, why am I doing this, or why am I starting this way? What's the rationale? So I kind of have that storyline. And if I find out I get recording too far ahead, I'll get messed up, because I'm not smart enough to make notes, or draft anything out. I more wing it. Um, so I record mostly when my wife is not home. Um, I There are times our other daughter lives here in town, and she has a couple kids as well. One older than our granddaughter, one younger. So um, my wife will take them over there to play, or they'll uh, go and have dates. And it, like tonight, for example, she's gone out. Our son is home, he's not working, so he would look after Parker, and I'd be recording tonight. So that's
Okay.
kind of the times. So I don't tend to record when my wife is around. That's kind of that balance thing. I'll play, and do off camera work if she's not busy. But then if she needs me, uh, she can just call on me. She doesn't worry, she's not interrupting. So I guess that kind of gets into that life, that balance thing is I just don't record when she's around. So I'm available to her if she needs help with anything. She doesn't need to worry about shouting downstairs and get me to come up, and I can stop what I'm doing. It's no problem.
I
And then
gotcha.
I do have kind of a direction in mind what I'm doing in each of the series, and I do kind of map that out. So my Let's Plays tend to be more like a recorded live stream in such. I do a lot of my editing actually when I'm recording. I do a lot of takes if I'm not happy with a segment. I got used to doing that on console. I play on PC now, but on console, it behooved you to do lots of saves and that. So I'm kind of used to that. So I do very strategic saves so that I can go back and redo something to if I'm not happy with it. Because I know like some of my buddies who make content, they'll do like 2 hours of recording and they'll knit that all together to make an episode. I don't. I don't throw a lot on the cutting room floor in the editing process. I throw it on the floor before it even gets to editing. So that's kind of my process there.
Okay. Okay. So, what would you say that you think you're not very good at, but others would disagree?
But I'm not very good at. Well, I think that would the one that most immediately comes to mind where I was never satisfied was in my shooting, my cowboy action shooting. But I think I know there are others that would disagree. But when you're in that type of shooting, there's many different categories. And in the category that I shot in, um, I expected and pretty much ended up in the top three. It came to there's three of us that one of us was going to win that category, but it just depended on who didn't make a mistake in the shoot, kind of thing. We're all capable of winning, and it was good fun camaraderie. Ooh, can't get that word out tonight, but it was all in good fun. And so when I looked at it, because of the style of shooting I did, if you looked at the shoot list out of 150 competitors, I would be probably in about the middle time wise or score wise. And I was always was pushing to get higher and never felt I was good enough. But then if you looked at my particular category, I was, if not the top, near the top. So I would say that's one where people, would think I'm doing really well. But for me, I wanted to do better.
So, as we previously discussed about your old job that you worked in, that seems like a job that would consist of a lot of travel. Am I kind of right about thinking that,
Oh,
or?
yes, sir. I put on in the beginning when I was running the field about 80,000 kilometers a year. Be about like 55,000 miles or something like that for the ones that are miles, but 80,000 K a year I put on a vehicle.
Wow.
And that would be
Wow.
driving, that wouldn't include the flying jobs.
That's crazy. That's a lot of miles. So, would you say that you really enjoyed traveling, or?
No, yeah, I really enjoy traveling. I've traveled all over, extensively all over North America, and I like it. I don't mind flying. I really enjoyed flying back in the early days when it wasn't more like taking just a bus. Things have really changed in that industry, but I still didn't mind it, but I much prefer to drive because I like to look at the countryside. And any place I go that I hadn't been before, like the first time I went to New York, I made sure that I booked time, in this case, at the end of the trip to spend time, um, a couple days there and do the touristy thing. So any new location I went to, I would always do that, try and book a couple extra days in the front or the back so I could go do the touristy thing in those areas. And then the really cool places I'd go and take my family to after the fact.
I gotcha. So, if money were no object, where would be that one place that you'd want to travel to?
Ireland.
Okay. Any particular reason why?
I'm Irish. My grandfather immigrated from Ireland, and I've still got family that I've never met over there. So that's the biggest reason.
I gotcha. Is there a particular place in Ireland that you'd want to go and visit, like outside of seeing the family? Would you want to go like see a destination or?
No, if I were taking a dream trip to Ireland, I would fly in, probably Dublin or someplace like that. I get myself, well, probably there you wouldn't need to get a motorhome. Because that's something I would do once in a while, fly into an area, rent a motorhome, and then tour around. But fly in, get a car, and I just start driving around the circumference or zigzagging my way. Uh, so, if I went there, I'd want to see as much as possible, and I'd probably drive. Just
I,
drive for it. There was a road that I could get to.
I'm right there with you. I'd much prefer to drive than fly anywhere because then I can see what's going on and check out the beautiful countryside or wherever the case may be. Yeah, I'm right there with you. So, what would you say inspires or motivates you?
Hmm, that's a good question. Like in terms of making content, you're talking
Uh,
about, or
Not even necessarily in content, but just kind of in life. Like, what kind of gives you the drive to get up and do what it is you got to do every day?
I definitely that would be my granddaughter for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing how a little one will put a fire under you.
That keeps you young, I think. Keeps me going.
Absolutely, it gives you purpose, gives you drive.
Yeah.
So, what's one thing that people are generally surprised to find out about you?
One thing that people are surprised. Well, I think um, cowboy action would have to be, you know, when I go on jobs and talk, you talking with the people you work with. That's one place that would get a lot of queries. Another one that I think surprised a lot of people, and maybe people who knew me for a while, or we've interacted for a bit, but it doesn't come up, is the fact that I built a 200-mile-an-hour street racer when I was younger and terrorized the streets in downtown Edmonton.
Oh boy, that
Surprised
sounds
to
like
hear that I
fun.
did something.
What kind of car was it?
I had a 1980 Firebird that
Ooh.
had um, it had the drivetrain out of a 1970 Camaro Z28, the LT1 350. They came stock with about 350 horsepower. The guy had built it up. He had it dynoed at 425 at the wheels, and then he rolled it just after he built it. I
Oh
bought the
no.
drivetrain from him, and I put it into this Firebird, and it was a custom Firebird. It had what we called the California tilt on so the whole front end of it, it looked like a Trans Am. It didn't start life like that. It was a Formula 400, but they had all the Trans Am flarings and all that on it. But the whole front end lifted up from the windshield. It was all fiberglass. It was just there was two hood pins up by the windshield, and then two hinge pins down in the bottom, and you pull those hinge pins out and the hood pins out, and two guys would lift it up, and you just have frame and engine. There was no fender wells or anything, so it really lightened it up. And that was all. It had custom aero on it, and I don't know if you remember, there was a scoop that they did on the Corvettes back in the Shark Corvettes that started right at the point of the nose and then would come and widen and get taller up towards the windshield. Well, they put one of those on it with the slats on it. So it was a wicked looking car, and it was lowered and it had tubbed in the back, and so didn't sit high. But that engine had a full race cam and an oversized heads. And then I did some electrical work to it. I never did dyno it, but it had more horsepower. So I guess it would had about between 450 and 500 horse out of that engine when I was done with it. But I didn't, when I bought the car, I bought the body to put this train in. I missed one critical question because I was trying to make a between the lights screamer because my one buddy had a Mustang and the other buddy had a Corvette. And I never asked what kind of gears it had in it. It had real tall gears in the thing. So it was a bit of a dog off the line. But I passed my buddy who in his Corvette, and my speedometer quit at about 120. But I passed him and he was doing 185. And I passed him with some authority. But I did learn one very important thing that day. If you make a car that can do 200 miles an hour, you best consider how you're going to stop it. And I'll give you one hint. It isn't the factory brakes.
No.
It's not the right answer, as I learned when I came down and came to that first red light. That was a little exciting, I'll tell you. I had actually the owner of the Mustang was riding with me, and we finally got woed up there, and his hands were literally on the dash like this. I said, man, I don't know why. I couldn't get, and you could just smell the brakes. I mean, you could just smell them. And of course, after that, and I drove and I hit the brakes the next time, the whole car just went, it just,
It
all the
broke the
rotors.
rotors.
Of course, it only had discs in the back, right? That car only came with the back, or drums in the back, discs in the front. And I said to him, man, I just about couldn't get stopped there. And he goes, yeah, I noticed.
Oh
He's
yeah.
really excited with that. I mean, we were not at the stop line, but we made her. But boy, she was a near thing. That was so funny when my other buddy rolled up in the Corvette. He comes down, he rolls down his window, like he points like this, crank down the windows, and he goes, "Do you know how fast you were going?" And I said, "No, I haven't a clue." He says, "I was doing 185 when you passed me."
Yeah, there's a reason why they make aftermarket brakes and the slotted rotors and all that kind of. I mean,
Worried about that initially.
you were worried about getting up to there. You weren't worried about getting back.
I was very, very disappointed that it didn't scream away from the lights because those gears were, and it had a super aggressive cam in it. So it was one of those very pleasant, and accidentally I was just running straight pipes out of the headers, and they looked like mufflers. But an initial startup, it had a huge backfire, and I blew the guts right out of the mufflers. So I thought, oh, cool, I'll just leave it like that. The cop looks at his muffler, so I was running straight pipes. So I was very pleasant to pull up alongside. I would be sitting there like that, But I'll tell you, and it was really boggy on the bottom, right? Because it was running such an aggressive cam. When that cam kicked in at 2,500 RPM, 2,600 RPM, that thing just started to purr, and it would actually, you could see the front of the car lift. You could physically see it lift and it push you in your seat, and you were gone, baby. I could do over 50 miles an hour in first gear.
Whoa.
I surprised a few guys.
I
I
bet.
surprised a few guys because they'd get me and they'd watch this. Oh, this guy's a dog off the lights. But I'd sucker a few because I just give her and make a bunch of noise, and then I back right off, and then they come want to race, and yeah, they get a jump on me. They'd be laughing, and then I just scream by them. Some
See,
fun.
that's the fun way to do it too, is that you kind of build up that little hope, that little inkling is, oh, I've got this. This is no worries. And all of a sudden you just see just screaming up behind you and just ripping right past you. It's like, oh, you build them up to tear them down.
You know what? There is absolutely no way I should have a driver's because we would go down Friday, Saturday night, my buddies and I told you about, and we'd be tearing up the main street in downtown Edmonton, um, and screaming up and down there. Never got a ticket ever, not once. My wife would drive that car, like every case she have to drive it, and she'd come home with a fistful of tickets. She'd have noise complaints. I had tinted windows. I had no horn. I had no front license plate because I wouldn't put a front license plate into my custom fiberglass front end. And she'd come and hand, oh, she'd be so annoyed. I said, what's your problem? You're not driving fast enough, obviously, because like I don't get these tickets. Yeah.
You didn't race away from the police quick enough.
Your problem. You're just not doing something right. It's hard to believe, but it's the honest truth. I never got a single ticket in that car, and every time she drove it, practically, she come home with multiples.
And that's the worst too, because then she's the one that's getting all the points and all that stuff. And
Well, I was okay. I had to pay for it anyways.
yeah.
Surprisingly, she was not a fan of that car.
I wonder why.
Hard to believe, isn't it?
I
Some
mean,
women are just so they just don't understand.
I mean, I've only ever heard of it, and I'm a fan of it. I don't know what her problem is. So, if money was no object, what would be your dream car?
Oh, that's an easy one. 918 Spider Porsche.
Oh, okay. That's a beaut.
Worth a bet you couldn't even buy one of those for $1 million now because there's only about 300-400 of them made. Hey, and I'm showing my green side because it's a hybrid. It's electric, gas electric, 600 horsepower gas, 300 horsepower electric. So hey, I'm conscious of the environment.
To an extent.
And it's only got like a 20-mile range on the electrics, but I figure at 900 horsepower and 20 miles, if you haven't won the war, just cruise home on the 600 and be happy.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've always been a Porsche fan, 911, and that has that classic 911 front end, but that modern styling on the back. Like, I just love that car.
Yeah, it was the if I remember right, the Porsche is like just stubbornly stuck with the rear engine design, but wasn't it here recently where they actually moved it to the middle?
I think the Spider is a mid engine.
Is it a mid engine? Okay. Yeah, because for years upon years upon years, it was always rear engined, and that was one of the biggest complaints is that the handling, even though it was a great car, that if you even lost traction even for a second, you're gone.
My love of Porsche was for a very, I can tell you this very specific event that formed my love for Porsches. I was in Nevada, it's where our head office was, and the Ferrari Club of California was having a road race up to Virginia City. It's a twisty, windy road going up the mountain from the Carson Valley up to Virginia City. And I saw the sign on the highway. Well, I'll go look at that. So it's a bunch of Ferraris, as you might expect in the California Ferrari Club. No shocker there. And these guys would take off, and they had a bit of a rising straight, and then you went to a bunch of sharp hairpins. And these Porsches would pull up, or Ferraris would pull up, and well, they sounded like Ferraris, but they'd rev the engines, and yeah, you get this little bit of a burnout, a little bit of a squawk, and off they go. But man, they're accelerating up the hill, and they're still, got pedal to the metal going around the corners. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Then this guy shows up in a Boss Mustang, about a 1970 Boss, and oh yeah, no, that's a nice car. And it definitely wasn't stock. You could tell by listening to it. And he stands on and off the line, and away he goes, and there's like blue smoke going over, and he tears off up. But you can see as soon as he gets up to the corner, he's hammering on the binders. He's got to slow down to get around the corner. Oh, okay. And it was hard to, I thought he was definitely quicker off the line than the Ferraris, but he lost it, time going up the hills. Yeah, then this guy came up in a 911 turbo, all jet black, all blacked out in that Porsche, and he screamed out of there, a very nice, in the middle burnout, and he didn't hit his brakes going around that corner. I said, that's my car right there. That's what I want.
So there was a show that was on a while back over on the BBC called Top Gear. Are you familiar with it?
I know the show. Yeah, Jeremy Clarkson, know of him,
Hmm.
obviously. I don't know that I've actually watched the show though, but I know the show.
It sounds like it'd be a show that you'd be into. Basically, just three guys going around in a bunch of supercars and having a good old time, having theme episodes every once in a while. It's definitely worth a check out, and they are absolutely hysterical together. They kind of tried to rekindle the magic on Amazon, called the Grand Prix, and that one was good, but like I said, it just wasn't the same. It just wasn't there. But definitely worth a check out if you're a big into cars and whatnot. Definitely see what you can do about finding it. Whether it's on Amazon, you can check it out there or something like that. But definitely give it a look.
I'll bet you that was probably one of the I think I don't know if it was a snippet. I saw something it was on YouTube, but it was Jeremy Clarkson driving one of them three-wheel cars and he rolled it over about 3 times. He had to keep coming up. I'll bet you that was part of the Grand Tour. But it was
No,
definitely no supercar. It might have been a super grocery cart, but it was no supercar. But that was funny because you keep going around corners and tipping it over, and guys that have to run out and push it back on its wheels.
it was the Reliant Robin, a little three-wheeler car that they made overseas, and yeah, he couldn't fathom the thought of having three wheels, and that was basically the entire theme of the episode was these three-wheeled vehicles. And he's like, oh well, I'm just gonna go over to the store and whatnot, and he'd start driving off, and then all of a sudden just go skittering across. The camera would be like dead set on one intersection, and he'd just go skittering through it. It was that was a good episode. Yeah, definitely. And they had tons of stuff like that. Some were goofy, some were a little bit more serious and whatnot. But it was a good mix of a show. Definitely, you should check it out.
I'll have to check it out.
So, what would you say is one of your biggest fears that keeps you up at night?
Um, Honestly, it's no secret I'm getting a little bit long in the tooth, and that's my worry is, that my health stays and I'm able to be here for my granddaughter, for a good long time, I would say.
Gotcha. And do you own any pets?
Yeah, we have three pets. We have two dogs and a very old cat.
Okay. What kind of dogs?
A hateful little miniature dachshund that thinks it's a Rottweiler. And then we have it's a Bernese, Great Pyrenees and Bernese Mountain Dog mix, the 50-50 mix. The dad was the Mountain Dog and the mom was the Pyrenees. And it's actually our second Pyrenees. We had a purebred Pyrenees before that, but our neighbors uh, were breeding these two, and so we got one of their pups.
Okay, that's got to be an interesting looking dog. I don't think I've ever heard of a combo like that.
Yeah. Well, okay, the Vietnamese Mountain Dog is kind of white, brown, black, really long hair.
Hmm.
And of course, Great Pyrenees are long hair and pure white. But very interesting, we picked this dog because it was kind of the run of the litter, but because of her coloring, because she took the white and the tan only. And although she is a shedding machine, she hasn't got incredibly long hair like either one of the parents. Um, Not as short as a lab, but not as long as the other ones. So she's a very pretty dog and very evenly the her coloration is very even on her face and that, but she's white and tan. And I thought it was incredibly unique, but then got looking around online and it's a fairly common trait to get that color combination from those two breeds intermixing. And the tan is a very minor gene in the mountain dog, but and of course doesn't exist in the Pyrenees, which is snow white. But yeah, it's interesting. Of course, she's the third princess that I have to deal with.
So it reminds me of when my parents were getting ready to pick out their last dog there. And for a little while there, they were doing nothing but St. Bernards. And they had two in total. And the first one looked like the stereotypical St. Bernard, except he um, never really drooled or anything like the stereotypical St. Bernard, and unless he got excited. That was the only time that he would even have any drool whatsoever. It was, just really, really happy about whatever it was. The last one that they had, they called me over and they're like, "Hey, we're looking at these Saint Bernards. Why don't you come check it out?" And I'm going through the list of all of them, and then we came across this one, and it's like, wow, he's actually very interesting looking. What kind of caught me off guard is that he had the half mask and not the full mask like most Saint Bernards do. So he had like the black spot on one eye, and then the entire side of his face was all pure white. I'm like, wow, he looks really interesting. And as soon as I said that, they're like, see ya. They took off and they went and picked him up right there that afternoon.
Now, I've always had a dog. So I've had a couple labs, had a chocolate lab that was really special. And then I had a Rottie, which I absolutely loved. And had actually, when I think about it, 3 Pyrenees over my lifetime. I've had 3 of those. And a couple Basset Hounds thrown in there for good measure because, you got to have something to annoy you. And I love Basset Hounds, but God, that, I have a Basset Hound, and then I wait 10 years after that one's gone and get another Basset Hound because by that time I forgot how bad the baying was, and say, "Oh yeah, I really like those." Yeah, so I've always had dogs around, but I like the big dogs as a general rule. I'm not a small dog fan. I like the big dogs.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's one of those that I've got actually a pair of them right behind me here, and these are about the smallest ones that I've owned in my lifetime, with the exception of when I first met my wife, then girlfriend. She had a little Chihuahua, and that was the smallest dog I'd ever owned in ever. But he was actually really cool. He was one of the few times where I was like, you know what, I'd consider getting another Chihuahua because of him.
That is, my wife gets the little dogs, I get the big dogs. We had a Chihuahua one time, and what they lack in stature, they make up for in annoyance. I never had a dog that I had to lift onto the couch, take off of the couch, put on the chair. That's what I got tired of. You had to pack. Oh, you can't let it jump off the couch; it'll break its legs. Well, then it's not a dog.
We
I don't
ended
know
up
what it is. It doesn't qualify as a dog.
we ended up having to build a ramp because he would sit there and whine at the foot of the bed. So we built a little ramp that would go up the front of the bed by the footboards, so he could get up and down throughout the night. So he can go and get a drink when he wanted to. He'd get back up on the bed and just kind of curl up and do his thing. Otherwise, he would just sit there and annoy you until you picked him up, and then he'd sit there and bat at you to let him down. Yeah, annoying was right, but he was a cool dog.
The one dog that I've always wanted to have and never have is a Mastiff. I've always wanted to have a Mastiff. I'd even settle for a Bull Mastiff, but I prefer the Mastiff.
Beautiful dogs. Beautiful, beautiful dogs. I've never owned one, but a friend of mine growing up had one, and this was one of the coolest dogs. He had like one of the most laid back temperaments until you did something to the family. The moment you did something to the family, you better check yourself before you get wrecked, because he would just flip a switch.
That was the same with my Rottie. Um, and we had young kids at the time, and they'd literally ride him like a horse, or they could go and pull on his jowls. He wouldn't bother him, and we had him. Well, he I guess you could say we could take some credit for Train, but when he was little, or we had a crate that we put him in when we went away, so he didn't eat the house. We learned that the hard way because once he did eat the house, and then what happened when he got older, I just took the door off and that was his bed because he was very comfortable in there. And I just taught the kids and the dog, you don't want to be bothered. You go in the crate and you don't bother him. That's his space. Just leave him alone. He tried to get into the crate one time after he ate my pork chop when I had to got a business call at supper time, but we had a bit of a rodeo over that, him and me. We got both kicked outside because I was a little annoyed. I do like my food, and we didn't have any extra. He just walked by the table, hump, there went my pork chop. And then when I got off the phone, he could tell I was mad. So he ran for the crate, and I said, "No bloody way are you getting in there." So I'm dragging in this 160-pound dog out on pure fury. And then I got kicked outside, he and the dog, and so we were wrestling around out there. And I came back in. He loved to wrestle. And one of his favorite, he learned how to body check. So he'd run right up to, and he'd just turn and he'd just knock you. And you're gone. Then he'd jump on top of you and drool all over you and lick you. And then he'd get up and he'd want to do it again. I was exhausted. I was absolutely exhausted when I came in. I fully admit the dog beat me. The dog won. I had a broom handle that was broken in a bunch of pieces because I tried to get to him. And he thought it was playtime. So I had a good meal and look at the playtime we had. Boy, yeah,
he had a good time.
You did not want to come into our house unannounced.
Mhm.
We had a couple of experiences. We knew exactly what was going to happen, and it was bad news for any intruder. What? Sorry, I'm just yakking on you, but I used to at Halloween, wife would take the kids out, and I'd be at home. And of course, we did a big thing at Halloween, pumpkins all on the line on the sidewalk, and I had scary music going and orange lights, and I had a screen door. And Chance, if he barked at you, if he came out barking, that was just, "Hey, I'm Chance. I need to be petted. Come on, pet me." That
Mhm.
when he was mad, he did not act like that. When the doorbell would ring, if we had the main door open and just the screen door, well, he'd just stick his head, even if the screen was there, right through the screen and start barking. Like I've literally had to chase pizza guys down my sidewalk to go get him because Chance made it to the door. We've got to, corral him up top when someone was coming, and they take off. And I want that. Come back here. But on Halloween, what I do is when all the little kids, I corral them up top. But I'd be standing on my window, of course, in the dark and watching. Oh yeah, here come them 16-year-olds. All right, I'd let Chance loose. They'd ring the doorbell. His head would come out. Of course, he's black. The house is basically black. He'd just come out there all teeth. And if they came back, they got candy. If they didn't, well, I had a good laugh.
Oh, you sound like a man
Trick
after
or
my own
treat.
heart.
Trick or treat, baby. Works both ways. And I had a record with old haunted house sounds that I had cranked up on the stereo. Yeah, yes, sir, Billy's. Well, Chance and I loved Halloween. We had so much fun.
That's hysterical. Yeah, that's definitely stuff I would do too. That was 100%. You get some teenager come by and it's like, okay, let's have some fun. This is Halloween, of course. Oh my goodness. So let me ask you, who's some of your favorite creators both inside and outside of the farm sim community?
Uh, Well, inside, I mean, my favorite. I mean, no disrespect to Mr. CDP, but it has to go to Scroft. I think, but what he does, I don't know. I guess you call him a creator. Is he a farm sim player? You could almost argue that it's just a platform for him to tell his story. What he does is amazing. But like Scroft, I still, though I'm faithful, I watch Mr. CDP. Farm Sim Guy too. I watch a lot of his content. I mean, if I had more time and before kind of things took a turn, Farm Sim Guy was another guy that I watched just about everything he put out. But yeah, those are kind of my top guys there.
Okay, and what about
Uh,
outside?
Outside. Well, I don't know. I follow some real farmers like Millennial Farmer, Farming, Fixing and Fabricating, just a few acres farms are kind of my top real farm channels. I also follow like for music, Wings of Pegasus, Classic Album Review, Professor Rock. Um, Particularly Professor Rock, I really enjoy because I like the stories behind the music. And I guess a bit of one of an off the wall I watch a lot too is Aqu Aquaholic, I think is how you say it. It's basically does yacht tours, mega yacht tours and regular yacht tours. But I watch a lot of him as well.
Okay. And then I got one last question here for this segment, and it is, if you could meet any three people, who would they be and why? And it could be, present, past, whatever the case may be.
Any three people.
So to buy you a little bit of time while you think about this, the reason I ask this question is that it really kind of gives people an insight of those people in whether the present or the past that you find to be important enough that you would want to like spend your time to see them and get to like experience their presence.
I think one would be my grandfather, the one who immigrated from Ireland, because he passed when I was quite young, like basically a toddler. So, I mean, I'd love to sit down and hear his stories. So that would be one. I think probably, I mean, in the music industry, there'd be, I don't know if it would quite be hundreds, but there'd be a lot. But I think, one would have to be Johnny Cash. I think I'd love to sit and have a conversation with him and talk about what went on there. And I think lastly, it'd probably be Abraham Lincoln, actually. And that one's a bit different because I read when I was a manager, we did lots of manager training and had recommended reading. And one of the books that are really, and was just wasn't a very big book, but it was called Lincoln on Leadership. And that made an impact on me, that little book. And I really enjoyed it. And I think the question would be, was that just intuitive what you did, or was that actual uh, planned? Was it conscious, or is that, or did you even realize that it would be analyzed in this way, and this is how people looked at it in the future? I think it would be interesting to get his take on that.
Absolutely. And you know what? I actually lied. I do have one more question before we go on to the next segment. So you mentioned that you're in the Edmonton area, correct?
I'm no longer, well, I'm about a little over 2 hours from Edmonton, but I'm south
Okay.
and east of them now.
Okay, but you spent a fair bit of time there, I would
Yeah,
imagine.
during my working career, I lived in Edmonton. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So let me ask you, how gutted were you a few weeks ago?
You know what? I am from the Wayne Gretzky era of the Oilers. And I'll tell you, yeah, I mean, it was easy to be an Oilers fan in them days. But the other nice thing was the average person could afford to go to a hockey game now and then. I still got to go because of my connections at work, occasionally. But yeah, I was, man, because, it's hard to I find it hard to believe they'll hold that team together intact much longer. The core is that, I mean, that's what happened with ultimately Gretzky, and when that went, the whole, everything kind of went south. And I was kind of feeling like this had to be the year, because I don't know how much longer McDavid's going to hang around and not get a ring. Like, he's too good a player not to have a ring, and I
Hmm.
think he's got to be thinking that this ain't going to happen here. And then once that happens, then you were right back to, you know, 10 more years of crappy hockey.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, and that's the problem with the Oilers. I think have always been their goaltending. I think their goaltending has always been their weak point for the longest time. They've had a couple of goalies here recently that were, I mean, okay, but they haven't had that kind of breakout like starter, like for sure. Like, I forget the name of their goalie this past playoff run. It's not Skinner. But
No, I didn't even, to be honest with you, I didn't even follow it, like, other than to, what's the score? Yeah, okay.
yeah,
Sorry I asked.
it's one of those
I
where
was a real avid fan, but I just have fallen kind of off the way. Like, I'm interested, but I'm not, you know, just don't follow it like I used to. It makes a difference, I find, if I can't go to the games, just watching it on TV is okay. It's great if you're going to the games and get that experience, but when you can't go to the games, you just following on TV for me, I just kind of just fades away a little bit.
well, 100%. Yeah, it's you get more invested in really in anything if you're there to experience it. But if you're just looking through
Yeah.
your little picture box and oh, here it is, then I mean, it's one of those that can come and go.
Yeah. That's kind of what's happened to me for hockey.
Yep, yep. I completely understand you, and especially I don't know if you can see it here, but Detroit Red Wings are my team, so it's been a struggle for a while.
Yeah, and they were, just like the Oilers, they were the powerhouse at one time.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, back in the '90s and early twos, yeah, they had their run for a while, but not much more anymore. So that's all right. But that's all I have for this segment here. So let's go ahead and turn to the chat to see if anybody has any questions. Again, I want to give a big shout out to Dust Bunny for collecting these questions. I greatly appreciate you, Dust Bunny. Says, got one here from Taco de Groot. Thank you so much, Taco, for your question. Says, just check your channel. Question, do you do your playlists the other way? Could you do your playlist the other way around? For binge watching, having the newest on top isn't great. So it's more of a question of, could you switch it around kind of thing.
Well, I can if I can figure out how to do it. I don't have any problem doing it. I didn't know that was an option, to be honest with you, but I can. Maybe you can give me some advice on that, Dave, afterwards.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's something I stumbled into a while ago, and I think I figured it out, but I'll definitely help if I can. Taco, thank you so much for your question. Greatly appreciate it. We got one from Farmer. Ooh, I think that's supposed to be Farmer Donkey. Thank you so much for your question. It says, Farmer Murphy, if you could meet anyone in the world, living or deceased. Well, see, we already answered that question. We're already ahead of the
Yeah.
game here. Greatly appreciate it. Let's see. Got one from Dust Bunny. Dust Bunny asks, where do you want your channel to be in 5 years?
Well, at my age, hopefully there's just new content showing up in 5 years because that means I'm still here. You know what? I honestly haven't thought about it that far ahead. Um, I just like to see it kind of continue to march along and grow. I don't have uh, I don't think it's gonna ever I guess you shouldn't limit yourself like that, but I don't see it being like 100,000 plus subscriber channel. I just don't. I just don't see that my content as it stands right now stands out enough to be there. But and who knows? Things change. I might stumble across the magic formula, but I just hope it's still there and still ticking over and still growing.
I gotcha. And before we get into the next segment, I want to just send a big shout out to, I saw Wranglosaurus Rex, and I think I saw one other content creator out there did a channel raid. So thank you also very much. Unfortunately, I didn't catch the name of the first one. But again, thank you also very much for stopping in and hanging out with us here tonight. Moving on to our next segment here. We call this one the meat and potatoes, emphasis on potatoes. This is where we get to know you for more of your content creation here on the Farm Sim side of things. So let me ask you this. What's the story behind your name there, Farmer Murphy?
Well, Murphy is my last name, so that's very creative. And farming's what I do, I guess. So yeah, there's nothing special there.
Okay. See, there are times where, you think it's going to be, something straightforward, hey, Farmer Murphy, and it's going to be like you said, last name and into farming kind of thing. But then there's occasions doing this show for as long as I've been doing so far, almost 3 dozen episodes or so. You occasionally you run into, it's like, oh no, it's not my last name, it's like the name of some random person that kicked me while I was walking down the street, and I don't know how I caught his name, but that's how it worked out. It's just so it's one of those you got to ask.
Yeah.
So
No, nothing particularly creative there.
so do you currently only produce farm sim content, or do you produce anything else?
Yes. No, just farm sim.
Okay. Now, one thing that I found in doing the Farm Sim talk show like this is that there always seems to be some sort of connection to Farm Sim, the game itself. Whether it's, I grew up on a farm, or I just had a real deep love for the country because I lived in the city, but I would always vacation out into the country and would see all the tractors and stuff. And it was just kind of that bond that kind of grew out of it. Do you have a kind of a story that kind of this is why I am in the farm sim space, this is what I love about this game?
Um, yeah, I was raised on a farm, and I always loved the equipment. I moved into the city when I graduated, but up until then, I was primarily on the farm. We did a little stint in town there for a couple years, but no, most of my life I've been on the farm.
Okay. And what kind of farm was it? Was it just like a arable farm, animals, things
Well,
like that, or?
when I was young, we moved down east, and worked on our uncle's dairy farm. So we did dairy farming. I'd be like very small scale dairy farming down east. And interestingly enough, uh, did logging in the winter, as my uncle did logging in the wintertime. And so the logging does fit with farming, I think. And then it was arable and a beef farm when we were up by Westlock.
Okay. And did you specialize in any particular crop, or?
No, no, I mean, we had the beef stock with the feedlot. We did a little bit of canola for a cash crop, but mostly barley and some oats because we had horses as well, and
Okay.
hay, of course.
Okay, so you tend to produce the grains and stuff to be able to help out around the farm, and then kind of sold what was extra, or?
Yeah, we fed most of what we harvested. Like I said, except for the canola. And the money was in the beef stock. We raised Charolais.
Okay, okay. And then kind of give us a history of when you started your channel. I believe you said you started in 22.
Basically, I did one episode in 19 on Millennial Farm, just saying, "Hey, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna kick the tires on this in 22. We'll see you there." And then everything I did on 22, I did in console. I started a series right at the very end of 22 on PC, and I moved to PC in for 25 full time for content.
Okay. Was there a specific reason that kind of drew you to, you know, jump from console to PC? Was it just that kind of additional stuff that you could do, or?
Um, I'll Elk Mountain. Farm Sim guy did a series on Elk Mountain. It's a 4X PC only map, and it just says I got to do this. I wanted to play. I don't know. Well, maybe because I'm from Alberta in the prairies, I wanted big farm, so I wanted to play on a 4X map, and the only way that was possible was the to do PC. And then, of course, once I really got into it and started paying attention, I really love the realism that you can get with the PC mods. And yeah, so it's kind of no turning back.
I gotcha. And have you ever thought about, learning any of the coding aspect or anything like that to perhaps, make make mods, maps, or anything along those lines, or a bare minimum to kind of modify the XMLs to be able to serve a specific need?
Yep, I do modify XMLs for my own use. I did coding was programming was what was my major when I went to college. So I've always had an interest that way, and I did a whole bunch of it around work for different projects. And so I mess around with the XML files. Uh, I I have thought about doing modding because I another thing I did through work was AutoCAD, worked with AutoCAD drawings and that. But I worked enough with it to know how much work it is. So I'm not sure I want to, I really enjoy playing. I'm sure I would enjoy creating mods and doing that part of it, but I just don't think my life right now allows for me to do both at the same time. But yeah, I do mess around and change XML files. Nothing too serious. Like I'll change speeds on vehicles if like there's been some mods out there that are older vehicles and for some reason they think they can only do 40 miles an hour. And I know from a fact like a 68 GMC pickup will do way more than 40 miles an hour. I've driven one, so I'll do speeds, capacities sometimes. I don't do anything unrealistic. An example would be I was using the Conveyall and I was using it to haul lime, and I wanted it just was just shy of capacity of holding 3 spreader widths or 3 spreader loads. So I tweaked it up just a little bit so I could get three loads of lime out of it. That kind of thing is what I'll do.
Okay, so it wasn't like in that case, it wasn't like a big like, oh hey, let me put like 5 million liters or something like that. It was just a small enough tweak to be able to get that one little extra pass.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And do you consider yourself more of a kind of a realistic player, or do you have a kind of different kind of playing style?
No, I'll steal from Mr. CLP here. I give a pretty good nod to realism. I will do it realistic if possible, but I found like with content creation, sometimes it's not practical. So I try and do it on screen realistic, but then like when I got a ton of logging to do off camera, I'll use an auto loading logging trailer and that kind of stuff. Just I found I just need to reduce that time for the off-camera work in the background. So I'll do some unrealistic things there. But mostly it's auto load. I have what series? Um, Geez, I can't remember which one it was that I messed around. I did some unrealistic stuff like the huge capacities. Oh, it was Valley Spring actually, where I was doing that challenge. And so I got into some Unreal stuff on there, but as a rule, I don't. I tend to play more realistic, not ultra realistic like Daggerwin or um, oh, can't think of his name now. Just gone. Come to me when I don't need it. But there are guys that are way more realistic than I am, but that's where I tend to go in
I
that direction.
gotcha. Yeah, that tends to be how I go about doing things too. Is in front of the camera, it's like a semi to mostly realistic, and then behind the camera, it's all bets are off. I'm getting the job done as quickly as I possibly can because you got to get to the next thing so you can move the story along.
Yeah, I never used to do that, but then it just became, as your series grows and then you get busier, you got more to do. You know, I think they'd like to see an episode them more than once a month.
Oh yeah. Well, and especially if you make the mistake of picking the wrong map or something like that. Uh,
Who
so
would
an
do
ex-
that?
oh,
Who would pick the
so
Who would do it as the author intended challenge on Valley Spring? Honestly,
oh.
Joy Josh challenge. Who'd do that? I don't know. I've never met the guy.
No, no. I ended up doing a series on Alma, Missouri, and it was the like I did everything in first person and everything as realistic as I possibly could, in front of the camera and all that stuff. And that's when I realized, whoa, I made a huge mistake because it was taking me hours to even get one job done because of the massive fields and all that stuff. And it's like, man, I'm spending, days making a single episode. So it's like, okay, I've got to be smarter about the next map I make and how I'm going to play them.
Well, and that's how I sprung up with doing, like, I use auto drive and course play in my, and I'll use them on camera. But that's why I came up with the idea of the story. So they're people. Like, I even my last episode said, okay, Jim is being played by Auto Drive today. So I give them, they're built into the story. Um, and so it fits in. It doesn't seem cheaty then, you know.
I gotcha. So, what's one thing that you never expected when starting your channel? And some examples I give are the sense of community, any unexpected backlash, things along those lines. What's something that you never expected to happen but did?
I think the friendships that I've made through the community is something I just didn't see coming. I just
100%.
didn't expect that.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. The same thing happened to me when growing my channel. It's just the community on Farm Sim is just absolutely amazing. It's the best I've ever been a part of. So, would you consider Farm Sim to be your favorite game? And if not, which one would be?
Without a doubt. It's my favorite game. Um, in 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 FS 22, I put in almost 8,000 hours on Farm Sim.
Wow. Okay. So it's one of those where you're not playing around. Well, you are, but
Yeah,
but
yeah, and to think of it, like, towards the end that, my ability to play tapered off. But yeah, I put some serious hours in there when I was semi-retired, basically. If I
Mhm.
wasn't, out doing a contract job, I was probably playing.
So one thing that I've experienced when starting my channel is the fact that because you're creating content and because you're trying to move on to the next thing and next thing, you really don't get an opportunity to actually like sit back and enjoy the game. Do you kind of find the same thing happening, or do you try to carve out some time to where you're just able to kind of unwind and be able to just enjoy the game itself?
You know, you know what, Dave? I just sitting here thinking, realized guy shouldn't admit that he played it that much, because you would think a guy who played that much Farm Sim be a little better at it, wouldn't you? Oh man, 800 hours, 800 hours, 800 hours, folks.
We'll drop a zero. That's fine.
Yeah, yeah. Um, you know what? What's one thing I've always done is I have the Let's Plays I've done, I've usually started on the map and said, "Oh, I really like playing this map, so if I'm gonna play it, I might as well make a Let's Play on it." But I have always had just for fun games going, where it's just me. I don't make any content on it, and I just play for fun. Although I do sometimes forget that I don't have anybody to answer to, because it's different when you're making content and doing things, and if you're doing something on camera. Well, how can I explain this? Does this make sense? Like, does it fit in? These kind of things are going through your mind. And then I'll find, oh, I'm on my fun game, I'm gonna buy something. Oh yeah, but can I buy it? That makes sense. Do I? And then oh no, I don't need to explain this to anybody. I can just do this. So I do get caught like that sometimes, but I don't. That's where my time has really been cut back, is I don't put near the time in my. It used to be I spent most of my time playing for fun and a little bit for content, but now I've had to give up the fun time, and content is mostly what's left. So I've had to give up a lot of that with the changes here recently, but I still do play for fun. I make time to play for myself. Usually I'll take a day, I'll just pick a day and say, no, we're just going to do fun things today. That's it. And we're not going to worry about the channel today. And it's going to play for fun.
I gotcha. So you pretty much started out for the most part there in FS 22. For the most part, you said you got the
Yeah.
kind of tail end of 19. Um, so thinking back to FS22, what were some of your favorite maps for FS22?
FS22, favorite map is real easy. Edgewater, Saskatchewan. Love that map. Did three different starts on that map, like played it three different times. And if it came out for 25, I'd play it again. Really like that map. And that actually is based on an area that's not too far away from me, like roughly geographically about 5 hours to the northeast. Um, Other maps, I did really enjoy Valley Spring. I spent like 1,200 hours on Valley Spring, so I guess I liked it okay. Um, that was another one I really liked. And Bloomfield was another one that I did a series on that I really enjoyed because Bloomfield is another Canadian map, but it's actually based in New Brunswick, which is a long ways from here, but it was done in such a way that you could actually find, I mean, I've traveled in every province and territory in Canada, and you can pretty much find a spot that looks like that, but it really looks like very close to where our farm was up in the Westlock area. So I did a series on there, and I really enjoyed that map too.
I gotcha. And what would you say would be one of your least favorite maps for FS22?
Another very Angevin. We did a multiplayer on there. Uh, Met an excellent friend on during that um, doing that multiplayer. Beautiful map, like picturesque. Very difficult to play on. Yeah,
And you kind of broke up there. Can you say the map name one more time?
and Angevin.
Why don't I recognize that name? Hmm. Well,
Probably because not very many people were crazy enough to play on it. Like it had things like trees going over the road, so you couldn't drive vehicles down. Traffic was insane. Some of the stuff it had bugs that were never fixed. Anyways, I know few people you could talk to would agree that it wasn't the best map.
I gotcha. And if you could pick any map throughout all of FS history that you played, what map would it be to bring to FS25?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. Well, I already mentioned Edgewater, but in there would be in 22, my favorite PC map was Loma, Montana. And I mean, it came out at the end and I didn't get to play on it much, a 4X map. And it is, if you want to know what it's like where I live now, it's just like that. And Loma, Montana is literally, just straight south of me because it's a real place. So that would be, yeah, I think those would have to be the two that I'd like to see is Edgewater and Loma, Montana.
Okay,
One's all platforms and the other one's a PC only.
gotcha. And then, do you tend to pay attention to the news, like future events and things like that?
I did, especially in 22. I was right up on that. And it's not that I have any less interest, but um I just, I only have so much time for YouTube too, and what I really try and do is the guys who are loyal to me and following my channel, they get first priority, and then my interests um come next. And yeah, the Farm Sim News at Goham, I was a very faithful watcher all through 22, but in 25, I have caught it occasionally. I wish I had more time, but it's just a factor of time and, putting first things first.
Absolutely. So the reason I ask is because depending on how much you were in the know of things that were coming up for the future, I was going to ask you if there is a map that you are excited about that's been announced uh, that just hasn't
Well,
released yet.
well, any map by Oxy, I'm excited about because I played on comps and my first series on 22 was on Comston, which I enjoyed. And I played on Court Farms. And I know he's got a new one out coming. I can't think of what it's called now. It just escapes me. But I mean, that's a map I'll definitely go on and spend a little time on. Um, And to be honest with you, I saw a little bit on that new Scottish map that's coming out by Giants at the end of the year, and that is something I would, dabble in as well. I think kind of interesting.
I gotcha. Yeah, definitely has kind of piqued the interest on my end as well. It's like, yeah, that could be pretty cool. That could be pretty cool.
Well, I really enjoyed Valley Spring, the Irish map.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's I I tend more to lean more towards the larger North American, or like some of the German maps too are larger fields. But that doesn't mean I ignore the smaller maps or the UK type maps. I play them as well.
So before FS25 was coming out, we were starting to get that kind of slow drip of information about all the features and things that were going to happen. Things like ground deformation and fog and all those kind of little tidbits of the features that we were to expect once FS25 was released. What feature were you the most excited about before it released?
Um, Ground deformation was a big one for me. Like I was excited to see that because that adds to the realism from my perspective. So I was pretty keen on that. I was also keen on like the new worker system and GPS and that. But of course, I went to console or went, I still have my console hat on then. And then, in PC, it's not as a big issue. Although, I still do use the in-game, and I do like the GPS. Like I do use the auto steer uh, part a fair bit. But those were kind of the things I was interested in.
Okay. And what was that one feature that you were initially excited about but quickly soured on after you actually got a chance to play the game?
I don't think there was one I soured on, but there was one thing that I went in the beginning. And then when I got to actually use it, said, "Oh, I love this. It's kind of my favorite." And that's uh, now the name just third person, you know. Uh,
Okay.
I thought to have that. Who cares about that? And now I don't. It's something I do, but if you watch my channel, you'll notice like every series, my guy's got different clothes on. Clothes may be related to it. It's just a silly little thing, but again, it adds to the realism, And I don't know. I just get a kick out of it. So I go in and change them up, and so you don't see him in the same gear all the time. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was nothing in the beginning, and it's one of my favorite things now. A silly little thing.
So what's one thing that's not in FS that you really wish was?
Uh, really wish was. I think like they've taken steps in 22, it would have been swathable crops. So they've taken steps out because that's around my area. There is both direct cutting and swathing. One thing that's missing right now, I wish would come in, that you can swath the crops, but that's also how they cut the hay here, is with a swather, by and large. And that feature isn't here yet, but I expect it to come because it was in 22. So I wish that was here. Um, and maybe like we've got, just expand the crops, I guess, for like I was happy to see peas, but they're kind of like table peas, which is fine. But I'd like to see, we have feed peas we grow here, which is basically, I think it's pretty much the same pea. You just harvest it when it's dry, and you harvest it with a regular combine, and it's used for feed, but not human feed, animal feed. So that's something you know that would like to see, that type of thing. But I think they're getting it pretty rounded out. As my experience with farming, they've pretty much dotted all the i's of things that I would normally do in the farming experience I have.
So
That I mean,
when you're doing your Let's Plays, do you tend to kind of focus on any one particular style of farming, whether it be arable, forestry, grass care, or do you try to, just do whatever it is that will be kind of entrenched in the series itself?
Um, I think it tends to be more mixed farming. I do have like I've wanted to do and that I'm working on that now. Like I'd always wanted to do a corn slash soybean farm. Like that's just what they do. Just that straight arable farm. And that's one of my series I'm doing on Monteith right now. That's the way it's going. But it's an own the map challenge, and there happens to be a cow pen on there, so I have to do a little cows. But almost all of my series include animals of some types, which I find really interesting because when I was working on the farm, the animals was what I hated, and I did it was all the arable stuff I really liked, all the equipment stuff. And now in farm sim, you rarely see a farm with me without animals on it because I enjoy that part of it. Um, but no, I like Silver Run was obviously heavily forest oriented, but when I did a series on there, but it's, again, it still had animals and built an animal farm on there. So I think just by default, I end up kind of in a mixed farm situation, even though that may not be my intent on the outset. I kind of just naturally gravitate there, I think.
Got it. And when you are doing your series, do you tend to do any of the contract work that's available to you, or do you tend to just make your money in other ways?
That depends on the story. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's uh like on New Frontier, well, there is a little bit you could do on there, but I've chosen not to do any. I've done series where I can't do contracts. That's just not it. I quite often, if I am doing contracts, I set a rule for myself that I can't use farmers equipment or farmers equipment for the first year or farmer. There used to be a mod out there that I played with on my personal PC games where you could set the number of contracts you had to do for a farmer could use their equipment. Because to me, it just doesn't seem realistic. You'd roll into town and you'd roll up to a farmer, hey, I'm looking for work. Yeah, just jump in that $1 million harvester over there and just start ripping around the field and see what you can do. This doesn't seem real to me. So when I do contracts, I very often have that rule in the early stages is I got to use my own equipment and to build trust up before I can do. But so it can be you'll find some where I am doing contracts and you'll find ones where I don't, or sometimes I limit myself.
Gotcha. And then of those contracts that you work, do you have like a favorite one that you tend to like, okay, there's stone picking, let me go after that one. Or harvesting. Is there a favorite that you have?
Um, I pretty much do them all except for like as a general rule, I don't do the wood transport ones. That's an except I'm doing the 1,500 hour challenge on Riverbend Springs, and there's specific rules around that one. So I am doing wood transport ones on, but that's pretty much the only map I do those on. But um, I do like fertilizing contracts because they're fairly profitable, and especially if you get yourself in a position where you're making your own fertilizer on the farm. Um, and they're quickly done. So that'll be ones I hit. But I don't mind the plowing ones or the cultivating ones either, because I usually use a worker to do those. So
And do you have like a least favorite, like one that you will just avidly avoid? Like,
well, you know what? No, not really. But if they were to start doing poplar ones, yeah, I'd absolutely avoid those. And I guess big potato harvest. I don't even mind doing smaller potato jobs or root crop jobs, but the great big ones contracts, unless I'm desperate for the money, I won't do just because of the time they take.
I understand that one. And what would you say is your most memorable moment of your content creation career so far?
My most memorable moment? Do I have to tell the truth here?
I mean, this is your interview, so you say
Well,
it
this is
however you want to.
embarrassing. I was doing I mentioned I did a series on Silver Run, and I had a little sugar beet field. I needed some sugar, and it was that little field just across the river there on the just before you ran out of map, and I was chortling away to all my plethora of fans out there, and driving my tractor and absolutely not paying attention, and I got absolutely smoked by the train. And I actually ended up hanging upside down in the tree. I parked a pull behind sugar beet harvester and a tractor in a tree, literally nothing on the ground. And I was laughing so hard. I actually left it in. I mean, it was, I mean, how could you not? But it was hilarious. And that is one thing I got that from very early. I try and get myself out of these predicaments without cheating, like without doing resets or that kind of thing. I will put a pretty fair effort into correcting these kinds of mistakes, rollovers. I think I'm actually pretty darn good at picking rolled over logging trailers and putting them on their feet. I got a lot of experience with that. Um, and what equipment you need to use to get them on their feet. But that was a good one. I mean, I was almost literally rolling on the floor laughing at myself for that because it was just hilarious, absolutely hilarious. And
So to
there's not
me,
many people can put that on their farming sim resume.
so, so to me, it sounds like Kloss got a hold of you. And for those regular viewers of my channel, know exactly who Kloss is. But for those who don't, Kloss is the farmyard mischief making ghost, and he goes out of his way to make sure that you are, yeah, that you're not seen in the best of lights. So anytime something goes lost, blame Kloss.
I blame it on server lag.
There you go. That's equally as valid. So list some of your favorite mods that you cannot hop onto any of your series on without.
Oh, jeez. Uh, that's bad because I can picture the mod, but I can't think of the mod maker. You know what I mean? But
Hmm.
there's that 9 meter plow. Uh, is that ridiculous, Dominic? Is that him?
Or are
I
you
don't think.
talking about the one that you can switch to have mulching on and off, and it
No, no, it's
extends
just
like
a 9 meter. Just a 9 meter. You can configure it for 6 meter or 9 meter plow. Jeez, I can't.
the 6MT, 9MT, 12MT?
Yeah, that's the one. But there's also Rowley Christie makes a 6 meter one too that I usually have on it. It's just a straight 6 meter plow.
Yep.
But that's a must-have mod for me because I have tried using the furrow plows and it's just like it's not in me. I've actually swore I'd started a series one time. That's what I was going to use, and it lasted for one field. I said, no, I just can't do it. I can't do it. So that'd be one for sure. Omatana's mods, they pretty much follow me wherever I go is another one. Her productions in that I use quite a bit. Um, then it kind of like I do use a lot of what is it, JHHG, I think is his John Deere. I don't know if I'm doing a John Deere series. Um, and I use custom modding, a lot of his tractor mods as well. But those are kind of dependent on what style of farm I'm doing because I tend to be brand loyal on my farms because that's what I see around here. And it makes sense to me, if you're gonna have a bunch of case equipment, you'd have a lot of similar filters or same filters and more parts you'd need to stock, one dealer you're dealing with. So I tend to do that. So I get to use a lot of different, so there isn't like just, oh, I gotta have this tractor, it's on every map. It isn't. Uh, they're varied.
Okay. And then earlier you mentioned Oxygen David. Would you say that he's your favorite map maker, or do you have like a favorite? Like, okay, you're going out in the mod hub, you're checking things out, and all of a sudden you see a map by X maker. Do you have one, or do you just kind of roll with the
Um,
punches?
Oxy would definitely be up there. As you know, any map he makes, I'm going to check out because I like the detailed maps. Um, on the PC side, DJ modding, I'm playing on Judith Plains right now. Really like that map. Um, he's one I look for. Um, Lancy Boy was also another one I'd always look for.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm not familiar with the PC modders, unfortunately, but one of those that I definitely recognize several of the names that you threw out there, and yeah, they're all titans amongst the map making world. I'll give you that one 100%.
Alien Jim too, but unfortunately I haven't seen him from a long time. But Washoe, Nevada was one of my favorite FS19 maps.
Did you ever play Washoe at night?
I did. Yes, I certainly did. I put a lot of hours in Washoe. I ended up owning the whole map on that one.
So the first time that I got to play that map and I did overnights, I had no idea about the whole alien, thing going
Yeah.
on that thing. And I'm sitting there and I'm just going through and I'm doing something on my farm and it's like midnight or something like that. And all of a sudden, the whole screen just flashes this bright white light. And I'm like, what's going on? Like I thought I broke my game or something like that. And then all of a sudden it disappears and okay. And I then just catch just barely the flying saucer just going, off into the distance. Like, holy! That's when I realized that modders and map makers actually have a sense of humor.
Yeah, the he actually had a lawn chair up on a hill. You could go and sit and watch the aliens. I remember that.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep. The lawn
I like.
chair, the
Yeah,
bunker.
he was really good, and he was really good at putting a lot of detail in his maps. I found, and a lot of extra stuff, but very good. I don't know if compiling it's an old term that used when programming, but he put, what I would say, he compiled his maps very well, so they were very resource friendly compared to some people who put a lot of resource in, but the maps are hogs,
Hmm.
resource hogs.
Did you ever get a chance to play another Alien Gym map called Spectacle Island?
No, Spectacle Island is one I did not play.
Oh man,
Big Mercury Farms.
that one was one of my favorite maps because of all the little features that were on it. Basically, you had to start with a farm that was just completely run down and destroyed. You had to go around and cut down these specific trees that would then alter the farm to clean it up for you. So if you cut down a tree, it would take the slats off of the windows. They would put up like the boards across the windows, and then it would take those off and it'd make it to where you go in and out of the house. You had like all sorts of debris and stuff around the farm that if you cut down the tree, it would pick up all the debris and things like that. It was just, that's kind of slow and steady grind. Yeah, you're right. Alien Jim did a fantastic job with his maps and has been sorely missed.
Yeah, definitely.
So, was there a creator out there, or you know what, we actually we answered that one already, my apologies. So last question I have for you here for this segment is, if you had the ability to make a map in real life and the uh, prerequisite skills were not an issue, you could do it with your eyes closed, what map or where would that map be based off of in real life?
It would definitely be an Alberta map here in around me, or a place. It'd either be a southern Alberta cattle ranch, or in the foothills of the Rockies, because that would be a very picturesque place to do it. Or the other option would be to do like a large arable farm, based on kind of the the mid east of Alberta, where it's truly prairies and the real big grain operations are. Be one of those two places.
All right, I gotcha. And like I said, that's it for all of my questions here for this segment. Now it's the time to turn our sights back onto the chat and see what they have to ask of you. So we got one from Samuel. Again, Samuel, thank you so much for your question. Says, I think he's asking, are you a veteran?
No, no.
No? Okay. Okay. Thank you again, Samuel, for your question. Greatly appreciate it. We got Ken Adlam. Ken, thank you so much for your question. Says, what's the best vehicle mod you like using?
Actually, the modified international the heck is the model of it? Not the 200, but the was the CVT or CV, I think, that one, with the 1-ton international. There's a modded version of that. It was a base game, but that shows up a lot because it's got the deck you can put on it, and then you can put a tidy tank or slip tank, depending what you used to calling it on it. Yeah, that's pretty much on every map, I think. I really enjoy that one. It's a versatile vehicle. I like it.
Awesome, awesome. Again, Ken, thank you so much for your question. Greatly appreciate it. We got one more here from Majors Gaming. Majors ask, Farmer Murphy, sorry if this has already been asked, but any specific equipment that make you like to see licensed or brought in? So I think he's asking, is there a maker, like an actual real life maker out there that you would like to see brought into the game series itself that isn't already existing?
You know, I would have said up until 25 Versatile. Like Versatile, there was some stuff kicking around, but Versatile has its roots in Canada and in Winnipeg, and actually the big tractors are still made there. But now Versatile's making a bigger appearance. So I can't really think of any brands I'm familiar with that are missing now. Maybe more. I wouldn't mind seeing some older Allis-Chalmers in. You know, um, they are fairly popular out west here. The Alice's, so wouldn't mind seeing some of them. Be another one I think of.
I gotcha. Again, thank you all so very much for sending in your questions. And Dust Bunny, thank you so much for sending them over my way. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. Now it's time to go into the third and final segment. We call That's a Silage Wrap. This is where we're going to start closing things out. First off, I want to thank you so very much for coming out and hanging out with us here tonight and doing this interview. Murph, this was an absolute pleasure to talk with you here tonight.
Well, thank you, Dave. I enjoyed it. I might be known for having a little bit of the gift of the gab or being a little chatty. You can ask some of my buddies who go on the Let's Plays or on our multiplayers, I should say, because sometimes they don't get to talk a lot.
Well, you know what? When you can chat, you can chat. So nothing wrong with that, I say.
Yeah, I think it comes from the business I was in, met lots of people, and so never really met a stranger. So you just got used to talking to people. You had to, no choice.
No, without a doubt. So, do you have any future plans or projects that you can reveal to us?
Well, I have a wish list. I've really got a desire, and I've tried a couple times and it hasn't really worked out. But I really want to do a multiplayer series that is multiplayer from start to finish. I like to do that. One thing I thought I'd never do is streaming, but I've Farmer Mike, one of my buddies here in the farm sim community, he had 1,000 subscribers and he did a 10-hour stream, and he invited people to join, and I joined him, and he's decided to run that as a streaming series. So I join him pretty regularly, and I'm really enjoying that. Of course, multiplayer is one of my favorite facets of FS. I enjoy playing it on my own, but I prefer to play it multiplayer if I can. I really, really enjoy that. So I'd like to get more of that multiplayer going on in the channel.
Awesome, awesome. And then, can you remind us where we can find you?
You can find me. The best places to find me is just on YouTube at Farmer Murphy. And then if you do want to join my Discord, like I said, it's not too active, but I am on there, and My Farm Sim buddies are on there. If you want to join me on there, you're more than welcome to.
Awesome, awesome.
It's
And
just
then
Farmer Murphy.
I'm sorry, go say that part again.
It's just Farmer Murphy again on Discord.
Excellent, excellent. Well, again, I want to thank you so much for coming out and hanging out with us here tonight and doing this interview. It was an absolute blast.
That was my pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I've been looking forward to it.
So, this is the part of the show where I turn to the audience and ask if you enjoyed what you saw here tonight and want to see more people come out and do this show. Go ahead and let me know who it is that you would like me to try and reach out to in order to be able to get them on the show. Unfortunately, there's no way for me to know everybody who exists out there. There's tons of content creators, modders, mappers, the whole nine yards, and I'm talking about anybody who is even connected to the farm sim world. So I'm talking, like I mentioned, modders, map makers, content creators, whether it's here on YouTube, Twitch, whatever the case may be. I'm even talking about farmers, because without them we wouldn't have farm sim. So it'd be cool to actually get to interview a actual farmer and kind of go in depth into the realm that they do all day, every day. So like I said, reach out to me on any of my social medias. You see them listed right down there below, as well as in the links that are in the description there. And just let me know. Just let me know if there's somebody out there that you'd like me to attempt to get a hold of and get onto the show. But all that being said, I really do hope that everybody here enjoyed the show here tonight. Just need to check one last thing because I did hear something go off. Dust Bunny says that there is one last question. Go ahead, Dust Bunny. What's that question? I'll go ahead and ask it just real quick. Let's see. But again, before we go off for the final sign off here, I want to give another shout out to Munchies Plays. Munchies, again, thank you so very much for your contribution to the show here tonight and going forward. That song is awesome. I absolutely adore it. I will be playing it again before we take off as the kind of outro for the show here tonight. But again, thank you so much. And I see that Dust Bunny is typing away as we speak right now. So there it is. We got Pippa has asked a question at the beginning and I missed it. Let's see. Okay, so I think it's one of those that we're just waiting to hear back from the individual that asked it, but apparently we missed the question earlier. So I do apologize, Pippa, if we missed it here tonight. If you want, go ahead and send that question to me directly, and I will ask it of Murph later on. So again, I want to thank everybody who stopped in tonight and hung out with us. I want to thank everybody for the couple of raids that I did see come across the screen there. I'm fairly certain that this was the most attended Farm Sim Talk that we've had to date. So that is absolutely awesome. And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out tonight. And if you enjoyed this, please show us by liking, sharing, subscribing, following, commenting, doing all the things. The algorithms enjoy you doing. The shows you're engaged with this channel and enjoying the content. And that being said, I hope everybody has a fantastic day. Take care. Murph, go ahead and hang on for just 1 second, and I will catch you after the outro.
Okay.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoy the new Farm Sim Talk song. So enjoy it.
This is Farm Sim Talk with BDD. Let's roll.
Out here in the country, where the roads run wide, there's a world behind the pixels that we're bringing to the light. From maps to mods, to the rigs we drive, we're talking to the folks who keep this farm life alive. It's Farm Sim Talk with BDD. Come pull up a chair and ride along with me. Stories from the makers John Deere, digging deep with modders so their voices we can hear.